business or busyness? Welcome to Standing on Business with Dr. Melissa, the Purpose Prophetess. This is a bold, unfiltered journey for entrepreneurs, visionaries, and purpose-driven go-getters who are ready to stop performing and start becoming. Each week, I take you beyond the hustle and into the heart with soul-stirring truths, powerful strategies, and real conversations that uncover what it means to be the CEO of your own life. So, if you're done chasing paper and ready to activate purpose, tune in, tap in, and take your place at the table. This is Standing on Business, and this time, it's personal. Hello, mates, and welcome to another episode of Standing on Business with Dr. Melissa, where it's not just business, it is personal. So, today, I really want to talk about, we've been talking about this whole concept of identity and how identity is really the prerequisite for living a life of purpose. You guys know we hear about purpose all the time, and everybody's trying to find their purpose and live in their purpose. And unfortunately, we're trying to do that without becoming who we were supposed to be. Like, who does the purpose belong to? And so I'm really going to keep drilling in this whole concept of identity because I'm going to tell you that's the key. If I can help you, if I can walk alongside you and help you to unlock who you were called to be, I'm going to tell you that purpose is a byproduct. Power is a byproduct. Profits is a byproduct. Okay? So, today I want us to have a discussion, just, like we're sitting at the Starbucks sipping on a cup of coffee. Okay? I want us to have a discussion about one of the things that I think hinders our ability to identify as who we're called to be and ultimately live in purpose. And it has to do with how we need to reclaim our own voices. Like, the silence is deafening. And for many of us, we have lived so muted that it's very easy to forget the sound of our own voices. So, let me start this whole discussion by correcting a misunderstanding that I think keeps people stuck, right? Generally, when we talk to people about being silent and not using their voice, I want you to understand that silence is not always fear. And generally, we think that, like a person is being silent because they're afraid. Silence is not always fear. Silence is not always weakness. I know the concept of that person is muted, that person is silent. It's almost like a lack of strength. But I'm going to tell you that's a misconception. Silence is not always a lack of confidence. Because for many of us, just walk with me on this, silence, not using our voice, was intelligence. What? Yeah. Our lack of using our voice had nothing to do with a lack of confidence or weakness or fear. We sometimes don't use our voice. We sometimes remain silent because it's how we stay safe. Silence has become the mechanism by which we avoid conflict. Sometimes it's how we survive environments that were unpredictable, maybe emotionally volatile, or even dismissive. And I shared a little bit about that before, when your voice is dismissed. When you live in an environment, sometimes there might be dysfunction in the environment, sometimes substance use, mental health issues, whatever. Sometimes just the environment The physical environment that we live in is an unpredictable environment. And so you learn the rules of being silent. How many of you have heard the phrase, snitches get stitches? That's a rule, that's a norm about being quiet, being silent. And so if you've ever wondered, like for yourself, why do I know what I want, but I struggle to say it? Like I know in this moment what I need to do. I know um, what I would like to have, but I struggle with how to give language to it. If that's you, I want you to know that you are not alone, and this time that we're spending together is not designed to shame you. So just go ahead and release that right now. Release that whole what is wrong with me, and nobody's here to fix you. Okay? This is really about getting insight. Because what I really want to happen today is I want to let you know that I'm here to help you understand what your silence protected, because it was definitely protecting you from something. And only wise women and men do what protects them. So I want to help you understand what your silence was protecting, but now I want you to realize what it's costing you. Because what used to protect you, you're now paying a very high price for. Sounds good? So listen, when I was a child, and I've talked about this before, I wasn't naturally quiet, right? By nature, I was just curious. I was talkative. I shared with you guys before, I had the nickname Motor Mouth. And it wasn't because I wasn't talking. It was because my mouth was running often. So I was that kid that was always asking questions. But my curiosity, my questions, my inquisitiveness didn't always land well in some of the unstable environments I was in. You see, in spaces that are shaped by poverty, fear, and unpredictability, whew, asking questions can not only feel disruptive, it can be a little dangerous, depending on how unstable and how unpredictable that environment might be, depending on how deep your questions might be shaking the status quo, the structures that are built around you that are sort of like a house of cards, and your questions become uh, a threat to the structures that are built. So I learned that having opinions could be dangerous. Um, Being seen could attract the wrong kind of attention. So I learned to manage myself. I couldn't stop being naturally talkative. It was just in me. But I learned to mute myself. I learned to turn down the volume. I learned to watch the adults in my life very carefully. I learned which moods were safe. The sound of footsteps. Believe it or not, the frequency and sound and cadence of footsteps were clear indications as to whether or not I needed to talk. So I learned when to speak, and I learned when to disappear. And soulmates, silence became my protection. How many of you can resonate with that? Whatever the situation might be, because it might not necessarily be exactly like mine, but whether it was a relationship as an adult, whether it was in a toxic work environment where you learned that speaking up or having an opinion was not rewarded, you learned that your silence became protection. And look, y'all, the world will reward you for your silence. What do I mean about that? You hear things like, you're mature. Oh, she's very mature. She's quiet. She's very mature. Oh, this person, oh, she's just so easygoing. She's easy. So and so is just a lot, but she is just so easy, right? Here's another word, low maintenance. We get rewarded for being low maintenance, not asking for what we need, not needing a lot, not articulating or verbalizing those needs. But soulmate, here's what I want you to understand. That silence that started as a strategy, it started as protection and a strategy, can quietly, no pun intended, become identity. So, I want to give you three thoughts today, three shifts, three ideas for you to sort of chew on and marinate on. Because I want us to be able to reclaim our voices. I want us to be able to make the turn from silence as protection into understanding that it's preventing us from the redirection into our identity. So let's talk about the first shift. Okay. I want you to recognize when silence has become a survival identity and no longer a choice. Like you have started now to identify yourself with that low maintenance, easygoing, mature person who, it's wise not to speak. I choose to just be quiet in this moment. And I'm not saying that that's not warranted. There's a time and place for everything. But I want you to challenge that silence and really just sort of do a litmus test. Is it because it's become identity? Has it moved beyond even being a choice? So, how do we do that? The first solution shift that I'm going to invite you to consider today is that you begin by asking honest questions. Here's one. Do I stay quiet to maintain peace? Mm. Am I silent because I want to maintain peace? And the peace comes at the cost of my voice. Here's another question. Do I avoid sharing to prevent being misunderstood? Ugh. If I could put both my feet up with my hands, I would. That was a big one for me. I don't want to be misunderstood. So let me just not share because I'm afraid I'll be misunderstood. Here's another one. Do I default to silence even when my voice matters? And this is for my brother or sister who, like, you're in a moment and you know that there's something that you have to say, something that you need to say, something that we need you to say. Because the solution and the answer and the perspective that we are looking for has been placed in your mouth. But you default to silence. It's almost like it's not even a choice. Your default is set to mute. It's like if you had your phone and every time, can you imagine? Well, in Zoom, it happens. In Zoom, it's a good thing. Like when I go into Zoom, I have it defaulted to mute with the video off because, Lord, I don't know how I'm going to show up on the on the Zoom. I'm like, oh, let me get myself together, right? And so it's a good thing because sometimes you're talking to your kids or, the dog or whatever, and you need to make sure that you are ready to be heard. And so, my Zoom is defaulted to mute. I want you to consider the fact that for some of us, that's how we live our lives. We are defaulted to mute. Like to really share or speak or give our perspective or use our voice, we have to go in and unmute because it's our natural setting, right? Here's what I want you to think about because I'm not against silence. I promise you, we're in a world full of noise and noisy people that are making a lot of noise and talking about absolutely nothing. So I'm a fan of silence. I will tell you, 35 years in behavioral health and the therapy field, silence, we understand, is a therapeutic tool. It's powerful. Sometimes in your silence, you allow people to then process and to think. And so it's not one question after another. And I teach young therapists that all the time. You've got to get comfortable with silence because in the silence, there's power. So that I want to present to you that when silence is chosen intentionally, that's when it's power. Not by default, not out of fear, not out of worry or anxiety about misunderstood, but intentionally in this moment, I choose to be silent. When it's intentional, it's power. But when it's automatic, it's conditioning. You've been conditioned to be silent. When I think about that, I think about this most latest season of my life where I was going through a lot. Um, Horrible tragedy had happened to my family. Um, Lost the patriarch of the family. A lot of people were talking. A lot of people were making it up as they were going. They didn't know. They took information and ran with it. And I can remember in that season wanting to defend myself, wanting to set things straight, wanting to say, you don't even know what you're talking about. And having not only the ability, you guys, to say it, but having the receipts, having the ability to prove people wrong. But I can remember distinctly in my prayer time hearing God say, you can either try to prove them wrong or you can prove me right. I've learned that when people want to misunderstand you, it doesn't matter what you say. So I say this, for people that know you and love you, no explanation necessary. For people that want to misunderstand you, no explanation is enough. And so for me in that season, my silence was intentional and it became powerful. So the case that I'm making about silence is the solution is conscious awareness, right? You don't need to force yourself to speak everywhere. Like I'm not trying to impose or present to you the idea that you just need to be talking. No, no, no. It needs to be consciously aware. This is a moment where I have something to share. But I also want you to learn to notice when you're quiet. Okay? Because the silence that once protected you, my loves, may now be limiting your expansion. Right? So I'm just going to have you sit with that for a moment because it's not, some of you are like, nobody's considering me. I'm not being heard. And I want you to consider the fact that some of you aren't being unheard. You're self-muted. And I want to suggest that that's something that we learned early on. Okay? So I was sharing about me being, muted as a child because of environments that I was in. But y'all, that silence followed me into adulthood. When I was no longer in these environments where people could tell me to shut up, and I heard that a lot growing up, shut up. I was in environments that no one was saying, shut up, externally. The voices that I heard as a child that was so hurtful and rude and telling me to shut up and my opinions didn't matter had started to sound exactly like me. Shut up. So now here I am in adulthood. I'm in leadership boardrooms. I'm in relationships. Shut up. You talk too much. That doesn't matter. That's stupid. Those voices that I heard before were now internal. And I promise y'all, those voices are a lot louder than somebody else externally. So there were moments moments that I knew I had something to say, and I wouldn't. I would, be in these rooms when I knew that my perspective would have changed the outcome. Like I knew I had been given the solution to the problem on the table. And I would just be stuck in my own head, and I would filter it through all of the possible potential responses that I could get that wouldn't be favorable, that wouldn't be safe. And so I wouldn't. And so what happens when you do that? Come on, class. What happens? People say, oh, she agrees. Never mind what they were saying I was totally opposed to. But my silence was consensus. And don't get me started on silence in the face of things that are wrong. Because silence is complicit. Somebody said, oh, I didn't, that kid was being bullied. I didn't say a word. You were complicit. You watched it happening and you said nothing. So the sad part is, for most of us, the silence doesn't mean consent. We don't agree. We do have a different perspective. But that silence is self-protection. And I'm going to tell you, over time, I realized something massive. Is that, yeah, I was safe, but I wasn't expressed. I was safe to a degree that I wasn't going to ruffle any feathers, but I was invisible because my voice wasn't even at the table. So let's talk about understanding and realizing how to reclaim your voice without overcorrecting, right? And this is going to introduce us to our second solution shift. And that is, I need y'all to listen to me on this one. Reclaiming your voice does not require aggression. You don't have to speak louder to reclaim your voice. You don't have to be ruder for your voice to be heard. Reclaiming your voice does not require aggression. It simply requires grounding. So here's the thing. The internal shift that you need to have is permission. Rather than feeling like you need to overcorrect or become defensive. And you guys, sometimes that's easy. For instance, I can recall with myself, when I first really started to realize that I needed to make this shift, it was no. Like, y'all, for a long time, I didn't understand the power of the word no. Because I was like, yes, yes. Yes, if I felt like it. Yes, if I didn't feel like it. Yes, because I don't want them to think they can't depend on me. Yes, because I don't want them to be mad at me. Yes, because I want them to know that I'm for them. And so when I finally realized that my yes was not really coming from a place of permission, but coming from a place of being imprisoned, y'all, I learned the word no. I don't know, for probably about a good 12 months. It's the only word I knew. No. There were some things that I should have said yes to, but I was like, I'm not saying yes to anything. No, 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 no. And, and back then I would say no is a complete sentence. And it is, y'all. But the thing about it is, sometimes when we break free from old mindsets, we can go a little bit like over the rainbow with it. It's like, okay, girl, bring it in just a little bit. Everything doesn't have to be no. But I was so worried that I would slip back into my patterns of just saying yes and agreeing to things that I didn't even want to agree with, that I just said no. And it's the same thing when I'm working with people and we're talking about finding their voice. When they start to find their voice, they feel like initially that their voice needs to be added to every situation and every commentary and every circumstance. And it doesn't. So this thing about reclaiming your voice is just about permission. Let me tell you some simple anchored language that you can have when it comes to that. I need a moment to think. Here's some language when you find yourself. Normally, you would be quiet and complicit and give invisible consent. Now, while I'm learning how to reclaim my voice, while I'm learning how to share my perspective at the table, while I'm learning how to hear the cadence and frequency of my own soul, I'm practicing like a baby walking. So maybe I say something like, I need a moment to think. In other words, I'm not going to be quiet and act like I agree with that. I just need a moment to think. You may say another phrase that's really good anchored language. That doesn't sit right with me. I mean, I hear you. And ordinarily, I would just sort of let that go, but just doesn't sit right with me. How about this one? I see this differently. Yeah, there's a lot of voices, and nowadays, y'all, there are just a lot of loud opinions and assertions being made. And it's almost as if you say something differently, you're put in boxes because everything is so tribal now that if you don't agree 100% with everything, then you're an enemy and you're on the other side. It's ridiculous. And that can almost force us to be quiet because we don't want to be perceived or to be described or stereotyped as monolithic. Like this, if you don't agree with this, then you must be that. It's so ridiculous, right? And so we've got to be intentional now more than ever that we're not just giving quiet consensus because we're not willing to say anything. I'm not talking about being loud and like I said, and aggressive. I'm talking about saying, yeah, I see that differently. Period, full stop. And however you choose to describe that, that's your business. That doesn't sit right with me. So what I want you to understand is that reclaiming your voice doesn't have to be loud to be authoritative. It just has to be aligned. You see, when your voice comes from clarity instead of reaction, it carries weight. It's not in the volume. It's not in the tone. It's not in the many, many words and, 25 letter word where a 3 letter word would do. Back when I was young, they used to say you're using a 25-cent word where a nickel word would do, country saying. But it was just like you're using words just to use a big word when a small word would do. Reclaiming our voices doesn't mean we have to be loud or aggressive. We just need to be aligned, right? And I'll tell you, many of the women that I work with, this is where we start. How to learn to speak from stability instead of survival. You'll find that when you're speaking from survival, not only can your voice be muted, even the word choices, the volume, so much of your communication is steeped in survival mode that it's like talking to two different people. So what we do is drill down, how do we speak from stability? How do we break ourselves free from the prison of being muted? Or even worse, having our entire language changed to fit someone else's narrative. Yeah, right? But here's what I want to say I hope I can help release you if this is resonating with you. I want you to know that you were not silent because you were weak. You were silent because you were wise for that season. But my loves, wisdom is about evolving. What's wise when I was 15 would not be wise now. How do I know? I've tried to do some things like when I was 15, and then my body lets me know, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. That was 40 years ago. No, ma'am. That's not wisdom. Bring it on in. So understand that wisdom is about evolving. I want you to understand that what protected you once does not have to define you now. It was good then. It was necessary. Shameless plug to my book. It was necessary then. It does not serve you now. And so I just want to hold space with you, my loves, and just root for you and let you know that this is your time to choose expression and to understand that expressing yourself is not rebelling, it's growth. Okay? So let's get to our third teaching moment. And this is how we learn how to let your voice become the expression of your identity. So we talked before about silence becoming identity. We're going to flip the script. How can now your voice become the expression, the clarion call, the megaphone for your identity? And I'm going to tell you this is the deepest shift because this is where you stop using your voice to justify yourself. You start using it to express your truth. This shift is all about embodiment. This is where we speak without apology. We speak without over explaining. We speak without chasing agreement. You see, your voice matures when it stops asking permission. I say all the time, unapologetically, I'm talking about breaking free from the need to ask who I'm supposed to be. Is it okay that I speak? Is it okay that I laugh? Is it okay that I have this opinion? We're no longer asking permission. We're showing up and saying, this is what it is. And I'm going to tell you, when your voice aligns with your identity, the beautiful thing is that silence no longer controls you. So, I have a few questions that I want you to sit with. And you don't have to answer them now, but I want you to take some time, give yourself the grace of time to just sit with some of these questions and process them. The first one is, where did you learn that silence was safer than the truth? Like, where? What situation? What environment? What relationship? What circumstance taught you that silence was safer than the truth? Here's another question. Who benefits when I stay quiet? Who's getting the benefit from you being on mute? Next question. What part of me is ready to speak now? Because I'm going to tell you, if you're listening to me and if you've been following me, the reason why is because there's a part of you, there's a part of your soul that is screaming to be set free. There's a part of you that's ready to show up. There's a part of you that's ready to not ask for permission. There's a part of you that's tired of apologizing for being. What part of that? What part of you is now ready to speak? And here's what I'm going to tell you. You don't need the answers immediately. I'm not even sure that those answers will come immediately. Most of the time, if they do, you've scratched the surface. And most people are content with that. Oh, you know what? That happened when I was, that's where that come from. And I'm going to say to you, if you get that first initial response, fantastic. Don't throw it away. But I don't want you to move on. I want you to sit with it some more. And I want you to allow yourself to drill down some more. Many of these questions, there won't be just one answer. So it's important because I'm going to tell you awareness. This is how we reclaim identity. And this is how we start walking in our purpose and our power. So, my loves, today's mantra, I'm going to give you a mantra. It's grounded, it's not confrontational, okay? This is the mantra that I want you to chew on, marinate on, sit with. My voice is safe because I am aligned. Let's say that again. Your voice, my voice, is safe because I am aligned. Alignment makes it safe for me to speak. So, if what we've talked about today, my loves, resonated with you at all, I cannot tell you how much it helps me when I hear from you guys, right? Use your voice, unmute. And I want you to leave a comment. I want you to share what silence once protected you from. Okay. And I want you to also talk about what it's now costing you. So leave a comment. Also, you all, a lot of you do this because I think some people are just, they like the anonymity of DMing. That's fine. You can DM me also if you feel like that you're reclaiming your voice in this season. I would love to hear what resonated with you. I would love to hear your story and your perspective. I would love to hear your voice. Here's what I want you to remember. You don't need to speak everywhere, but you do need to speak when it matters. Agreed? Good. All right, my loves. So I want to thank you for tuning in to Standing on Business with Dr. Melissa. I hope and pray that today's discussion has ignited a fire within you to embrace your authenticity, prioritize your purpose, and become the she or he EO of your own life. And listen, you don't have to walk this out alone. I have built a space for women and men just like you. Women who are ready to move in faith, even when they are still figuring it out. And that space is called Women with Power, Purpose, Power, and Profits. This is my free Facebook community where you're going to find strategy and encouragement. This is a place where women come to be sharpened, supported, and seen. Inside that community, we talk about purpose and we talk about profits and we talk about power, not as buzzwords, but as a blueprint. So you can search Women with Purpose, Power, and Profits on Facebook, or you can use the link in the show notes. I cannot wait to support you there. And then, of course, if you want more information about me, please visit my website, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and follow me on all the socials. If you look up Purpose Prophetess, Prophetess spelled with an F, you'll find me very easily. Okay? So until next time, join me as we dive deeper into the strategies and mindset shifts that are needed to build a purpose-driven life. I want you to remember that you are purposeful and you are powerful. I believe in you, and I cannot wait to see the incredible things you're going to achieve. So until next time, my soulmates, keep standing up, keep standing out, and always, always keep standing on business. Bye for now.